They didn't even invite me to the retirement party. My own sister, Rachel, who once shared a bunk bed with me and cried when I left for boot camp, left me off the list. I found out through a Facebook post. Smiles. Speeches. Champagne. And not a single word about me. She called it a small office thing. Said it wasn't personal, but I wasn't stupid, I was invisible. It's funny, isn't it? How silence can cut deeper than words. For years, I watched them pretend I didn't exist. Every family dinner. Every birthday. Every holiday. I was the shadow in the corner they never named, and when I came back from overseas, with a chest full of ribbons and a back full of pain, they looked through me. Like I was broken. Like honor only mattered if it looked good in a frame. They said I'd failed. That I was too rigid. Too intense. Too much. Rachel? She got the praise. I got the pity. She rose through civilian ranks, charmed her way into leadership. And when she landed a job at the same defense firm our uncle once ran, they celebrated like she'd saved the country. I sent her a congratulatory text. She never replied. Then came the moment I'll never forget. Her new boss, Daniel Livingston, a decorated civilian official with a clean suit and a polished smile, walked into the gala, shaking hands across the room. And then he saw me, his expression froze. "You're the senior U.S. defense advisor," he said. The room went silent, and just like that. The ones who erased me had no idea what to say. "Hi. I'm Madison Cole. I serve this country in ways most people will never know, because I wasn't allowed to talk about them. But today, I'm finally ready to speak. Before I tell you everything, I just want to know you're here with me. Just type listening in the comments or let me know where you're watching from. Sometimes the smallest connection can make a story feel heard, and if my voice speaks to something you've felt, hit that subscribe button. So we can keep standing together, in truth. Thank you. Now, here's my story. I hadn't stepped foot in that house in 8 years. Not since the day I left with a sealed file in my hand and silence wrapped around my name like a noose, but tonight, I returned, not out of longing, not for love. I wanted to see how thoroughly they had erased me. The house looked the same from the outside. A pristine, stately colonial. But inside, it had been transformed, not for me, for Rachel. Photos lined the halls. Rachel at age 5 with a science trophy. Rachel shaking hands with a senator. Rachel in her academy dress blues, eyes bright, chin lifted. Not a single image of me remained. Not one. Even the photo of both of us on high school graduation day, which used to hang by the stairs, was gone. It was as if I had never existed. My heels clicked on the marble floor as I entered the foyer. No one turned. No one gasped. My mother passed by, her hair still in its perfect sweep, her diamond brooch catching the chandelier's light. She didn't hug me. Didn't smile. "Don't disturb Rachel," she said flatly. "She's the only pride we have left." And then she was gone. My father sat by the bar, swirling dark liquor in a crystal glass. I reached to steady it, to steady him, but his hand flinched. He couldn't even look at me. Then Rachel stood to speak. She wore tailored navy. Her voice, trained and sharp. "If anyone here thinks a career in politics is easy," she said, letting the silence stretch, "they've clearly never been escorted out of the Pentagon for falsifying data. Like certain people in this room." Laughter, soft at first. Then bolder. A few clinks of wine glasses, my breath caught, but I didn't flinch. I stood there, glassy-eyed, waiting for the ground to split beneath me. It didn't. Later, outside, under the edge of fairy lights strung across the patio, I cornered my father. "You knew," I said. "You knew they threw me out because of something I didn't do." He looked at the ground. "They came to me," he murmured. "A contractor said they'd exposed the payments. The only way to bury it was for someone to fall. You let me take the fall," I whispered. "You let me become the ghost." His lips trembled. "You saved us. You saved this family." No, I said, stepping back. You sold me. My mother appeared behind him. Her expression unreadable. Every family has to choose the child who carries the legacy, she said. Rachel was that child. I stared at her. At both of them, my hand tightened around the stem of my wine glass, then released it. The crystal hit the patio stone with a shattering crack. I left without another word, walking into the Virginia night as rain began to fall, cold and clean. As I turned the corner near the edge of the neighborhood, I saw it, a black car. Parked just off the curb. No headlights. No movement, but when I stopped to glance back, the engine started. It didn't speed off. Just rolled forward. Slowly. Deliberately, like it wanted me to see. I didn't run. I didn't blink. I just looked straight ahead, let them follow, let them watch. The bar was quiet, half forgotten by the town and the world. Dim yellow lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to remind me that everything here was on the edge of breaking down. A tired country song rasped from the jukebox. Some old heartbreak ballad I used to hum under my breath, back when I still believed in second chances. Now I sat in the corner booth, a glass of whiskey in one hand, a burner laptop in the other, stitching together a fake CV. I wasn't trying to get a job, I was trying to disappear, maybe Prague. Maybe Istanbul. Anywhere but here. Then my phone rang, unknown number. Encrypted signal. I stared at it for a second too long before answering. Madison, a voice said, low, steady, familiar. Jack. It had been 3 years since I heard that voice outside of a dream. I don't have time for ghosts, I said. You don't have time for mistakes either, he replied. Listen to me, there's a defense proposal about to hit the floor. Strategic Restructure 12. It's being fast-tracked through the subcommittee. $10 billion in classified contracts. I took a slow sip of whiskey. Why would I help? A pause, then Jack said the name that cracked through my spine like lightning, Lauren Dovak. Silence stretched between us. Lauren, the one who mentored me, vouched for me. Then fed me to the wolves to save her own skin. The same Lauren who stood behind Congressman Crenshaw when he needed a scapegoat. The same woman who watched me fall and never blinked. She's the architect behind the entire proposal, Jack continued. And she's got Crenshaw backing her. If this passes, they'll be untouchable. I stared at the screen in front of me. At the lie I was preparing to sell to the world, Jack added, it gets darker if you walk away. Crenshaw has a synthetic video file, AI spliced, fabricated, to look like you taking classified documents overseas. If they leak that? You're not just blacklisted. You're done. My mouth went dry, then the bar door opened, 3 men stepped in. One of them locked eyes with me. His hand dropped near his belt, subtle, but not enough. I didn't wait, I flipped the table, sent the glass flying into the overhead light. The bulb burst in a hiss of sparks as I dove behind the bar. Chaos erupted, chairs scraped, someone screamed. I bolted through the service door, crashed into the kitchen, slipped on grease, caught myself on the prep counter. I heard footsteps pounding behind me, but instincts took over. I grabbed the chef's paring knife, ducked low. When the first one came through, I slammed my shoulder into his chest, twisted, and used his momentum to send him crashing into the shelves. The second one was faster. Swung a fist. It grazed my cheek. I swept low, knocked his legs out, kicked the knife from his hand. The third didn't follow. By the time I got to the alley, I was bleeding from my arm, breath hitching, adrenaline spiking, but I was alive. I ducked behind a dumpster, hands trembling. That's when I noticed something strange. The stitching inside my jacket sleeve, slightly rough. I tore at it. A small black disc fell into my palm, a tracker, sewn in with precision military thread, not new. Not from last night. Not even from today. Someone had been tracking me since before I came home, maybe long before that, and suddenly, I knew, the question wasn't whether I was going back. It was how fast I could get to DC before they buried the truth forever. Time was collapsing. I could feel it. In the way every second ticked louder than the last. I didn't have clearance anymore. I didn't have allies, but I still remembered the back doors. Under cover of pre-dawn gray, I made my way into the heart of Washington, not to the Capitol, not to Langley, but to an old Federal Records annex near Arlington. A building no one visited anymore. A place forgotten by headlines, but still humming quietly with ghosts, policy drafts, raw data, archived mistakes, my mistakes. I bypassed the main lobby, slipped around the loading dock, and pried open a rusted maintenance panel. I hadn't been there in almost a decade, but the codes? I remembered them, a ridiculous string of numbers tied to an old coffee joke, 7417. Should have had one, the keypad blinked. I slid through. Inside, it smelled like dust and freezer air. I kept to the shadows. Moved silently, until I reached the sub-level server room. The old backup drive was still there, unchanged, untouched, like a fossil sealed in concrete. The biometric lock had been reset, but the secondary systems? Sloppy. Someone got too comfortable. I accessed the Tier 2 policy review database. The system recognized my signature. Welcome, M. Cole. I let myself breathe. Just for a second, then I searched for Project STR-12. And there it was. The proposal was filed under Lauren Dovach's credentials. But the technical analysis, it had a signature, RS. I stared at the screen. No, it couldn't be. Rachel, my sister, she hadn't just followed in my footsteps, she'd stepped right into the engine room of national defense, and now she was part of the lie. I didn't have time to fall apart. I initiated the download. The data fed into my encrypted drive, slow and steady. Then the screen flickered, a new window opened. No sender, just a single line, we remember what you buried. Reveal it, and your family burns with it. There was a file attached. I hesitated, then clicked. The video was grainy, but the audio was crystal clear. Senator Crenshaw, leaning close across a private hearing table. My face still too young, his words, almost gentle, if you go quietly, Madison. Your father never sees the inside of a courtroom. You walk away, and this ends tonight. I remembered that night. I remembered the knot in my throat. The weight in my chest. I hadn't walked away, I'd been pushed. I hit pause, my fingers trembled. Everything I'd buried for my family, everything I'd lost to protect them, was now a weapon. Aimed at me. Then the alarm blared, red lights stung the walls. My access had been flagged. No time. I yanked the drive, but not fast enough. The locks clicked. I knew the layout. I'd designed it. I bolted down the hall, pried open a side panel, and climbed into the ventilation shaft, crawling through narrow steel, sirens echoing behind me. I spotted the emergency cache I'd built years ago, a tiny access vent, marked with 3 scratches. I slid the USB into the hollow and sealed it shut. If I didn't make it out, someone would. I emerged onto the rooftop, gasping. My ribs ached. My legs burned. Below me, the city kept moving. The Capitol dome glowed against the black sky, like a lighthouse for a ship I'd long since abandoned. And sitting there, sweat cooling against my back, one truth settled heavier than any classified file. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This time, I had to choose the people I once bled for, or the country I still swore to protect. The fluorescent lights in the underground parking garage buzzed like a hive as I stepped into the narrow hallway leading toward the briefing chamber. Jack had dropped me off in the back, avoiding the main entrance. No security checkpoint, no credentials. Just an unspoken agreement that I was still useful. For now. Inside the chamber, I stood silently in the second row behind a line of lesser-known analysts and aides. No one paid me much attention. I was just another shadow in a room full of suits and ambition. Then Lauren Dovach took the floor, polished, composed. Her voice gliding through the opening remarks like silk across stone. Beside her stood Rachel, my sister, reading out segments of the proposed defense project. Their message was clear: low strategic risk, high cost efficiency, national security guaranteed. I clenched my jaw when Lauren cited the final risk projection. Just under 3% failure probability, she said. I raised my hand. Calmly. Deliberately, I'd like to challenge that projection. A pause swept across the room. A few heads turned. Lauren looked at me. Her face didn't falter, but her voice dipped slightly. On what grounds? She asked. The algorithm used in your simulations contains a margin of error function that was manually overridden. The actual failure rate isn't 3%, it's closer to 30%. There's a 27% discrepancy. And that's not an oversight. That's manipulation. Gasps. Shuffling in seats. Rachel stiffened. Lauren's eyes narrowed. Who are you? Lauren asked, voice low, controlled. I didn't answer the question. Instead, I said, a national security analyst once refused to approve a project built on data just like this. She was discredited. Erased. Lauren's smile curled. Cold. Precise. You mean the same analyst who was dismissed for falsifying military readiness reports? Or was it for her ties to offshore accounts linked to black market contractors? Silence fell. I said nothing, not to defend myself. Not to explain. That silence, it rattled the room more than any speech ever could. Then Rachel stood, her voice trembled. But her eyes, they cut like glass. You came back just to destroy what I built. I looked at her, the girl who used to trail behind me with scraped knees and endless questions. Now the woman standing beside a lie. No, I said. I came back to stop you from repeating the mistake I once stayed silent about. She didn't respond, just stared, and in that silence, something fragile cracked between us. After the meeting, I turned toward the exit. A familiar presence blocked the hallway. Lauren, she didn't raise her voice. Didn't blink. If you keep pushing, she said, I'll make sure your sister goes down with this project. You want to ruin her? Be my guest. But don't pretend you're saving her. I smiled, not warmly. So, you're admitting the project is flawed. Her lips thinned. No response. Then she turned and walked away. Outside, the air smelled like oil and concrete. I headed to Jack's car, parked at the far end of the lot. That's when I felt it, the cold ring of metal against my neck. Don't move, a voice muttered. I froze, but my heart didn't race. It steadied, then, screeching tires, Jack's car barreled toward us, headlights blinding. The gunman turned instinctively. I moved, fast, my elbow slamming into his wrist. The weapon clattered to the pavement. We struggled. He slipped from my grasp and vanished between the rows of vehicles. We didn't chase. Not yet. Jack and I both stared down at the weapon he left behind. No serial number, matte black finish, government issue. Only a handful of units carried these, and every one of them worked inside the walls of Congress. It hit the news at 5:42 a.m. I was still half asleep on Jack's worn-out couch, the static hum of the TV filling the background. Then the words cut through. Defense contract leaked. $10 billion deal linked to unnamed insider. The screen flashed a grainy scan of classified procurement documents. My name, or a version of it, right there. Cole D., a lazy pseudonym, but unmistakable. The kind bureaucrats use to mask real handlers. The kind only those deep inside would recognize. By 6:10 a.m., my phone buzzed with a code red ping from the Office of Internal Security. Not a formal subpoena, not yet, just a requested interview. The kind you don't ignore. I didn't sleep. Didn't breathe normally. All I did was trace every login, every digital breadcrumb I thought I'd erased, but the trail didn't lead to me. It led to Rachel, one internal Zoom call. Recorded. Carelessly stored, and there she was, Rachel Cole, junior advisor, reading out draft analytics, with a spreadsheet open behind her. For 2 full seconds, her credentials flashed on screen, an open invitation to any watching eye. She didn't mean to do it, she didn't even know she had, but someone noticed. I drove straight to her apartment, stormed in before I could doubt myself. Rachel opened the door in leggings and a hoodie, still smelling like chamomile tea and peppermint shampoo. She flinched when she saw my face. What the hell, Maddie? She snapped. You leaked the files, I said flatly. Her mouth dropped open. what are you talking about? I shoved the paused frame in her face, her login, her screen, her mistake. She pushed the tablet away, face flushing. I didn't leak anything. I left the front door open and handed out the address. You didn't know, I repeated, no. She shouted. You think I've got your genius level paranoia? You think I live like I'm in a war zone, checking every shadow like you? My voice rose to meet hers. Then why the hell are you in national defense? Because I spent my whole life trying to prove I wasn't just your little sister. We were both shaking now. You think I enjoyed being second? She snapped. You were the prodigy. The legend. Then the scandal. I got to be the replacement. The experiment. Every meeting, every hallway, every look, it wasn't about who I was. It was about who I wasn't. I stared at her, at the way her voice cracked. At the tears threatening to fall but refusing. I never wanted you to be me, I said, quieter than I meant to. I wanted you to be smarter. Safer. Her eyes flickered. Then why didn't you tell me the data was wrong? I just did. I told her everything, how the metrics she compiled had been altered, maybe unknowingly. Maybe nudged by someone above her. That her name was now tied to a defense deal that could implode careers. That the people she trusted were already planning how to cut her loose. If it came to that, Rachel didn't speak. She just sat down on the edge of the coffee table, face pale, shoulders caving in. That's when the explosion hit, a sharp crack, glass shattering, then white smoke filled the room. I grabbed her and dove behind the kitchen island, coughing, eyes stinging. Through the haze, I saw the living room window blown open. The floor covered in shards, and on the wall, scorched into the drywall in thick black paint, bring your family into this and you'll lose them forever. We got out the back. I wrapped my arm around Rachel's waist, half carrying her down the fire escape as smoke poured out the shattered window behind us. She wasn't crying, just shaking. The kind of tremble that starts in the bones and doesn't stop. We ended up crouched behind a dumpster in the alley, both of us covered in dust and silence. For a long moment, she looked at me like a child again, lost, undone. I pulled her close and whispered, they're not just using you, Rachel. They're using every wound we ever buried to keep us quiet. And for the first time in years, I think she believed me. The safe house was nothing more than a forgotten attic above a retired locksmith's shop near Annapolis. No cameras. No internet. No paper trail. I hadn't been there in almost a decade, and still, the air smelled like metal shavings and insulation. I guided Rachel up the rickety staircase. Her arm brushed mine, not in fear. Not even in fatigue. Just resignation. We didn't talk much that night. The silence between us wasn't hostile anymore, it just waited. Lived in the space like it had always been there. I gave her the cot by the heater and took the floor mat by the bookshelf. And for a while, we just existed. Later, while Rachel slept, one arm curled under her head like she used to when we were kids, I sat by the only window and opened my encrypted drive. I played it again, Crenshaw's voice, still oily after all these years. If you want your father to survive the audit. If you care about your sister's education. Then silence is your best contribution to this country. Crenshaw. That snake-tongued bastard, the audio file from my hearing had never been released. Scrubbed clean from public record. But I had it. I'd kept it. Locked it away with everything else I couldn't bear to feel. Hearing it again now, with Rachel asleep behind me, made my stomach churn. That file had ruined my life, and now, I had to wonder, was Rachel's life just a softer, newer version of the same script? So I started digging, old foundations. Grant awards. Nonprofit audits, and then I found it, the Strategic Advisory Education Trust, harmless name. Prestigious brand, and right there, in a 2015 newsletter, under a photo of smiling freshman awardees. Rachel Cole. Full academic sponsorship for policy innovation, the donor, SAT, the the lead consultant on their board, Lauren Dovak. My hand froze on the mouse. It was never random, not me, not her. Crenshaw didn't just manipulate the trial, he planted seeds, years before, shaping Rachel. Funding her. Grooming her into the next perfect pawn, the next piece on the board, the next story they'd script from the beginning. The next morning, I went to see Mom. She was recovering in a hospital just outside Baltimore. The place smelled like bleach and low hopes. I found her alone in a room full of beeping machines and stale air. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, but dimmed just as quickly when she registered what I was carrying. I pulled up a chair. No hugs. No warm hellos, just one question: did Dad take the bribe? She didn't flinch, but her fingers tightened on the blanket. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I didn't tell you. Because I needed to protect Rachel. You were strong enough to survive." She wasn't. I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't a confession, it was worse, it was strategy, it was sacrifice, dressed up as love. I was too strong to be protected. Too stubborn. Too dangerous, so they wrote me off, like an inconvenient variable in a clean equation. When I left the hospital, the sun hit me like a slap. Rachel was right. Being the strong one wasn't strength. It was a sentence. Back at the safe house, a message awaited me on my private terminal. From Langston, one of the last analysts I still trusted inside the Policy Integrity Board. He said he'd found something, an anomaly in the algorithm Lauren's team used to model threat vectors. He sent the packet. Told me to meet him near Lincoln Hall, just outside the Hill. I went, brought a burner phone. Didn't stay still longer than 3 minutes at a time, but the moment I stepped out of the alley behind the building, I knew. A black van turned too slowly at the corner. My phone buzzed once. I was being traced. I ducked into a side alley, but I wasn't fast enough. A dart grazed my shoulder. Stun or track, I couldn't tell. I collapsed behind a dumpster, slashing at my coat with a pocketknife as the burn spread through my shoulder. I bit down on my sleeve to stay quiet, and then, tire screeched. Jack's voice cut through the alley, "Move." He dragged me into the car, floored the gas. Back at the safe house, he was livid. "Langston's been off the grid for months," he said. "That email was spoofed." "The location?" "Bait." I didn't argue. We both knew what it meant. Crenshaw didn't need to recruit strangers. He planted rot and waited. My shoulder throbbed. I cleaned the wound in the kitchen sink, pouring whiskey down the torn skin. Gritting my teeth, Rachel stood in the doorway. Her lips were thin. Her eyes, sharper than I'd ever seen them. "They're in everything, Maddie," she said quietly. They knew about the hospital. The alley. The files. They knew before we moved. I didn't answer, just wrapped my shoulder tight, stood in front of the cracked mirror. "They've spent years trying to bury my voice," I said, "to no one in particular. If silence is the price, then I'm about to make the loudest noise they've ever heard." Because I was done being quiet, done playing their game. It was time to burn the board. It was an old research facility tucked behind a veterans retirement center, forgotten by most of DC. Jack found it. Said it still had clean walls, a functional conference room, and a working coffee machine. That was all we needed. We crafted an invitation-only strategic subcommittee meeting, slipped it through secure but traceable channels. We wanted them to find it. We wanted Crenshaw's people to believe this was where I'd slip up, where I'd make myself vulnerable. Jack handled logistics, I handled the bait. The key was Rachel. She was nervous, but steady. We had one shot to trace the data pipeline between Lauren's encrypted laptop and the dark network. If we could implant a beacon in the middle of an upload, we could finally map out how they rerouted information under the radar. "You'll only have 2 minutes, I told her. No second tries." She nodded, fingers trembling slightly. "Got it." I watched from across the street as she entered Lauren's office under the guise of reviewing legislative edits. She moved like a shadow. For a second, I let myself feel proud, but then the timer hit 3 minutes. No word. The pit in my stomach opened, then my phone rang. No voice, just a muffled breath, then silence. I raced to the parking deck where her location had last pinged. Her laptop was still running in the passenger seat, but she was gone, no signs of struggle, just a folded slip of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. Your game ends here. Make one wrong move and your pawn gets crushed. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. I folded the note into my coat pocket and turned back toward the city. There was only one place Crenshaw would take someone he didn't want found, the old logistics depot beneath the west wing of the Capitol Reserve, once a hub for topographical simulations. Now it was offline, unmonitored, no cameras. No signals. I had trained there once. Now, I would breach it. Jack begged me to wait. I didn't. I wore no armor. Brought no gun, just a signal jammer and an old combat knife engraved with my initials, the one my father gave me before everything fell apart. The depot was cold. Metal shelves towered over me. Rusted canisters. Forgotten terminals. Shadows from another era. Then, movement. A switchblade clicked in the dark. He stepped forward, face hidden behind a mask. His hand steady. We didn't speak. We danced in silence, steel scraping steel, breath echoing in the dark. He was faster. I was smarter. When the lights flickered, I moved behind a column, yanked the hook chain from the ceiling, looped the blade onto it. As he charged, I pulled. The chain snapped forward with a crack. He dropped. I didn't check if he was breathing. I ran. Rachel was tied to a pipe in the back chamber. Gagged, but conscious. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Hey, I whispered, kneeling. I've got you. I sliced the ropes and pulled her into a hug. I couldn't save you 8 years ago, I said, voice cracking. But I'm not losing you this time. She clung to me. Trembling, then she whispered something that stopped my breath. It was me. I blinked. I was the one who leaked the faulty analysis. Back then. I didn't know what it would do. I just wanted Mom to see me. My chest cracked open. I destroyed your life, she whispered. For something you gave up to protect mine. I nodded slowly. No anger in my face. Just ache, and then I told her something I'd never told anyone. 8 years ago. I could have told the truth at the hearing. I could have exposed Dad. Exposed Crenshaw. But if I had, Dad would have gone to prison. And this family would have shattered. I reached into my bag and handed her the envelope I'd carried for nearly a decade. Inside, an unsigned testimony. Financial records. A shell logistics company linking our father to Crenshaw. Proof of corruption, proof I never used. Rachel stared at it, her mouth parted, her eyes swimming. We didn't talk much after that, just sat there on the floor of an abandoned depot, two sisters tangled in a web older than either of us ever realized. Finally, Rachel looked at me. Let me stand beside you at the hearing, she said. Let me help fix this. I nodded. We gathered our things. My shoulder ached. My body was tired, but something inside me had shifted. Not rage. Not adrenaline, just clarity. We were stepping out the door when my phone buzzed. A message. No number. If you think the hearing will bring light. Remember, not everything survives in the light. Rachel looked at me, pale. We're still being watched. I smiled, not from fear, but calm. Good, I said. Then let them see everything. The marble halls of the Capitol had never felt colder. The hearing chamber was packed. Senators. Journalists. Velvet ropes and flashbulbs. Cameras aimed like rifles. I stood when called. No lawyer. No PR team. Just me, and the weight of 8 years. 8 years ago, I began, voice steady. I stayed silent to protect the people I loved. For that, I was branded a traitor. I laid out the trail: Crenshaw, Lauren, private contractors embedded in civilian policy. I showed how Rachel's signature had unknowingly become the final nail. Then Lauren stood, smiling. She handed over a file to the chairman. Before we proceed, she said, I believe the committee deserves to see this. It was a doctored video, grainy footage. Edited audio. Me, accepting an envelope. Allegedly taking orders from a foreign operative, whispers erupted. Flashbulbs burst. A senator slammed his gavel. I move to suspend this session until we can verify. Then came the footsteps. Rachel, she stepped through the curtain. Calm. Focused, she walked straight to the chairman and handed over a device. This should clear things up. Unfiltered audio. Crenshaw's voice, she's too close. If Madison disappears, this all goes quiet. Like a grave. The room fell still. Security moved fast, handcuffs snapped over Lauren's wrists. Crenshaw's composure cracked when 3 of his own allies walked out of the chamber. It should have ended there, but it didn't. Within hours, fringe networks launched counterattacks. The fake video resurfaced. Hashtags branded me a double agent. A traitor. The government cleared me, the public stayed divided. As I walked down the Capitol steps, a reporter shoved a mic in my face. Do you think the American people should still trust you? I didn't hesitate. No one deserves blind trust. But if I had to choose again, I'd do it exactly the same. The offer came 24 hours later, Director of Strategic Operations. A seat at the highest table. I turned it down. We don't need another hero, I told them. We need a system that listens to the silenced. Instead, I built something quieter, the Silent Truth Initiative, a training program for young analysts, especially women, written off or labeled too difficult to manage. One afternoon, while overseeing the first office renovation, my mother showed up. She looked smaller. Fragile. I thought you broke this family, she said softly. But now I see. You were the only one trying to hold it together. I didn't need an apology, just her presence. Behind her, I saw my father. He didn't come in. Just stood at the fence. And then turned away. That night, Rachel knocked on my door, a resignation letter in her hand. I turned down the interviews, she said. I'm stepping away from the agency. I just want to be here. To listen. Like you always did for me. I handed her a clean notebook. Write everything down, I said. Not for your resume. For your heart. Later that evening, the office emptied out. I sat alone under a desk lamp, reviewing blueprints, and then my old encrypted device, one I hadn't used in years, buzzed. One message: Crenshaw was just the shell. There's someone above him. And they know you've seen too much. I didn't panic. I looked out the window. The Capitol dome glowed against the dark sky. And I realized maybe I'd never left the war, maybe I was only now learning how to fight it. On my terms, because sometimes survival isn't loud, it's quiet choices, it's standing when no one claps, it's speaking when your voice shakes. The truth doesn't always make headlines, but it heals, and in the end, what we carry forward isn't the betrayal or the pain, it's the clarity of knowing who we are. If this story touched something in you, drop a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe, so we can keep walking through the silence together.